TiE CCC, Karthik Kumar, short one, take one. Welcome to the Challenges, Change and Creativity discussion series. What can you and I learn from the challenges that other entrepreneurs have faced in their career? I'm your host, Praveen Shekhar, outlier marketer and chair of the TiE Chennai Creative Special Interest Group. Everyone talks about success, not many talk about the challenges, the bumps, the twists and turns that their career has taken them through. This brief, short discussion series is focusing only on those challenges, marketing false steps, and how each of these bumps have fueled ambition and growth. That is what this CCC discussion series is all about. Our guest today is Karthik Kumar from Rage, and we're going to touch upon how to get your clients to pay. How do you handle abstraction and ensure that communication reaches your consumer the way you want it to? And how do you handle change from abacus to artificial intelligence? That's what we're going to cover today. Karthik Kumar, he's got 40 plus years of experience in business strategy that have a direct bottom line impact. His career span traverses from market research among the first generation of market research practitioners in India to offline advertising as a key member of teams that have created, launched, and managed advertising for iconic brands, to the online world where Karthik has used his expertise in market research, advertisement, and general management to improve response rates to online stimuli. Karthik's dream is to create a self-sustainable socioeconomic system that will provide employment and utilize natural resources for communities. Market entry strategy, structural analysis of industries, branding, opportunity creation and evaluation, well bundled together. He's also an author. Bundled together, that is Karthik Kumar for you. Karthik, welcome to this discussion series.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Karthik, may I request you to tell us a bit more about your journey that spans across industries and sectors?
Well, in the days when I started to work in 1976, you took the first job that came along your way. And that's how I got into market research. And I found that there was an opportunity there because most people don't want to go and sell. And I took it upon myself to be a salesman of market research, as it were, apart from a practitioner of market research. And that's how I got interested in marketing as a function by itself. And because I was forced into industries which were very abstract and conceptual, I had to go and learn about those things. Therefore, that's how I grew up.
Beautiful. Let's focus on the first challenge that we discussed about prior, which is abstraction. And you also mentioned it recently. So Karthik Kumar, explain this problem and how you circumvented the challenge.
Okay, so if you take every job I've been had since the day I started to now, it's not something which everybody does. It's something which requires technology or specialized knowledge, which many people don't see the value of in their businesses because businesses have been going along fine without any of this for a long time. So when you try and go and talk to them about a new concept, right? Because it's abstract, people don't really get what you're saying completely. And it takes a lot of effort in trying to convince them on how it could help their business, right? Along the way, what you also need to do is to show some pilot projects and pilot examples of how it works for them. So that is something which you learn on the job and keep doing it. And apart from making presentations, you actually take business cases. The first question I ask my clients, for example, is, what are your pain points? I don't ask them how I can help them. I ask them what is causing them grief, and then say how what I'm doing can help them in solving the grief, right? And then we start building a conversation around it, because you are listening to what the person is saying and saying how what you can do helps them. So that is one very effective way of overcoming this abstraction barrier. The second challenge of abstraction is within your own company, within your own colleagues, because people believe that businesses, businessmen, and business managers should know everything. The reality is not that. Businessmen and business managers know what they do very well. They don't know what you do very well, right? Therefore, to educate people about what you do well is your job. It's not. It comes with a territory. It does not. It's not something which you're doing because they're not capable of learning. It's just because they don't need to know what you're doing, right? So that's the reason why this is also a challenge, because you have to keep people motivated within your company to educate customers, and educate customers not from a jargon-filled personal point of view, but from a point of view of the customer and how it helps them, and actually empathize with the customer and tell them how you can use it. So these are the challenges of abstraction.
Now, Karthik Kumar, it is easier for me to show and tell if I'm from the manufacturing sector or I have a food product or something. In the knowledge sector, Karthik, how can I, as an entrepreneur, circumvent? Because I have two horses to ride. One, I need the customer to understand, plus I also want my internal team to understand. So what is your thought in this regard?
Yeah, so I think let's say the customer first. I think if you go with a solving the customer's problem approach, rather than saying what you can do. For example, I have come across market researchers who come and say, I do product testing, right? I mean, the customer doesn't know what our product is. He says, I have an R&D department who does that, right? So you need to explain to them how product testing helps the R&D department, right? As opposed to saying, I do product testing. Or for example, in digital marketing, if I go and tell customers that I do digital advertising, right? There are hundreds of people doing digital advertising. Without explaining to them why is digital advertising important for their business, and how is it different from the advertising on television, right? What function it plays, how it plays that. I have to be able to explain to them, saying that there is a change paradigm in media consumption, information consumption, and who are the audiences, and therefore how it helps. And usually customers understand it because they are in the firing line. I mean, they need to make money, right? Once you explain it to them in that terms, they understand it. Only when you're going through a lot of jargon, they don't understand what you're saying, and they call you a bullshitter. The challenge internally, though, right, is that people are not curious enough. We need to build curiosity amongst people, right? Help them learn how others behave. Everybody, all five fingers are not the same, right? So you got to take your team together to say that, look, when somebody is asking you a question, it does not mean that the person is challenging you. It means that the person does not know something. Therefore, how would you explain to that person? You might turn around and say the person is expected to know, but the person doesn't know. He's saying doesn't know, right? Therefore, you got to explain to that. And it becomes very difficult in professional situations, because usually your team members are very young, they're very rash, they're very aggressive, right? And they tend to take things for granted. It's a human challenge. You just have to cope with it and go with it.
Beautiful. Now, taking you to a completely different scenario. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got 3 different entities here, Karthik, but every week or every month when we analyze, I have a couple of sheepish folks from the accounts and sales department who come and scratch their head and say, this is the cash conversion cycle. This client owes us money for the last 5 months, 4 months. And then I turn around and say, okay, when did you last ask? They said, I've sent an email. When did you send that email? I sent it 3 weeks ago and I'm waiting for a response. Now, this scenario is not just for my company. Most of the entrepreneurs I've interacted with have this problem of, how do I get my clients to pay? Now, that is a challenge all of us have faced. Obviously, you have faced too, and we'd love to hear that. Plus, what have you done in this regard, the processes or ideas that you've implemented in your ventures?
Okay, the first thing I think is that we in India tend to think that asking for money is below our dignity, right? I think we should overcome that barrier and say, it's after all my work, I'm supposed to be paid for it, and therefore I should ask for money. Having said that, in operational terms, what happens is that usually the person who presents the bill to the client happens to be perhaps it's an operational level person, and he is giving a bill to an operational level person in the client company. And the operational level person in the client company has got his own priorities. He's got his own bosses who are up his backside, and has probably forgotten to send the bill to his boss, get it approved, and then send it off to accounts. So the first thing is, I learned it very early in my days, is every client meeting that we went to, we would carry an outstanding list with us, and we will ask our client, where is the status of payment, right? And if there was, we would ask them, there are 3 processes to go through. Has it been approved by your boss? If it's not been approved by your boss, when are you going to get it done? And once you got it done, have you passed on the accounts, right? So we would follow that process diligently. And okay, fortunately enough for me in my old days, we used to believe in paper and pencil. It wasn't emails and telephone lines. So you had to meet people, right? Telephone lines didn't work. And if you go back to the 76, 80s, we had only plain old Department of Telecommunications, and half the time the phones won't work. So you had to physically meet people. And I think that holds good even today. Even with email communication, you just have to meet people. If you don't meet people, your bills are going to get delayed, right? And bills are not going to get paid. So once every time you meet a client, you have a list of outstandings, you do it 5 times, 6 times before you come to the outstanding list, the client will tell you where the money is, where the process is going. And of course, right, when it doesn't happen, you escalate it, right? You escalate to your boss, and your boss escalates it to their bosses. So that's how it happens. But first, we have to come over the problem of asking for the money. Asking for money is not below your dignity. Asking for money is your right.
Now, a continuation there. How can I ask money if I push too much? They will not give me the next project.
Well, if they don't give you the next project, good for you, because you won't lose more money.
That's a completely different, good way of looking at it, Karthik. That's lovely. Beautiful.
Yeah, but on the other hand, see, I think in my experience, I probably have had to do this with 1 or 2 clients only the last 40 years. Most people do pay up, and most people do respect the fact that you have a right to ask for your money. It's not that, you go to a restaurant, at the end of your meal, the waiter comes and gives you the bill. And you pay up, don't you? Huh?
I can't tell him I'll come back tomorrow and pay, or send the bill in triplicate with stamp paper to my Bombay address.
Yeah, there are people who play games, but you learn how to overcome them. And people play games. Normally you go right up to the bosses and say, everybody doesn't play games, right? 1 or 2 people play games. The system doesn't play games. And today, in fact, things are much more easier because you have GST in your system. And once you paid GST, the bill is acknowledged. You cannot say I haven't been billed. So even the check is in the mail syndrome doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, we will have to adapt to the newer changes, the newer systems and processes that come in, which brings me to the next part. 40 years in business, in corporate, Karthik, and quoting your own words, from abacus to artificial intelligence, how did you handle this change?
Okay, first is, it was a question of survival. If you didn't change, you would be run over with a truck, right? And it so happens that the baby boomer generation probably is the generation which has seen the most change in the last 40 years. I mean, if you compare from 1970s onward to today, um, even in India, I mean, we have gone from take communication, we've gone from uh, telephone lines which were difficult to come by, and when you got it, they never worked, to instant communication now, right? Um, so unless and until you have the adaptability to change, you got run over. But the important part of managing change is uh, understanding what the change is, right? So, for instance, to say that um, a telephone is only a communication device, not a camera, right? Would mean that you'll never get to use the same as a smartphone, right? So, or using SMS, for instance, right? SMS didn't exist in the earlier days. So, first is you need to be able to understand what the change is about, right? Whether it's technology, whether it's people. I mean, it's not just technology, okay? It's people also changing. You take baby boomers versus the puppy generation, the yuppie generation, the Gen Z, the next gen, and now the millennials, right? You have to work with all of them, right? The attitudes are changing, their mores are changing, their behaviors are changing. You have to be adapt with them, right? And you have to understand, to be able to adapt to it, you got to understand what the change means in terms of using that change, as well as what the change is capable of, the good that it's capable of, and utilizing that. I think that's where uh, I have had good success in, because to me, in my office, the standard rule is nobody calls me sir, everybody calls me Karthik. My 13-year-old niece calls me Karthik. And that gives them, there's approachability and access to people. So you're able to, and also the curiosity of saying that I don't know how this works. Show me how it works. Yeah? So you have to be open to ideas. You've got to be open to asking questions. You've got to be open to saying things I don't know sometimes, often, and know about it.
Right.
And also invest yourself in, sorry.
No.
You want to ask something?
I had a follow-up question to that. Listening back, you said building curiosity and, of course, working with multi-generations. If I need to implement that in my company, and so also the other listeners and viewers here, Karthik, how do I go ahead and do that? Of course, I will have to change from what you said. Show me how it works. I don't know is one aspect. But how do I continue to build this curiosity inside my company across these generations?
Well, what we do is have a series of contests and competitions, internal contests and competitions, where we tell, okay, here is this topic, tell us what you can do about it. And so at Rage, for instance, we have divided all the employees into subgroups or teams. They are multifunctional teams. And once a month, there is some event, right, where each of the teams has got to display either what they have learned, display or showcase some capability of theirs, which is maybe work related, may not be work related. It is basically something which forces them to start thinking and doing things differently. So that is the execution part of it. Apart from that, we do all sort of training, I mean, educational training, etc., within the company, which helps people to know that we value education, we value curiosity in the company. And third is we have a very strong program of certification among employees, right? And we actually fund the certification program for people and also incentivize them, force them to actually go and learn new things. So there is an incentive for them to learn new things, either both in terms of saving money, if they have to go elsewhere, do it on their own, it costs them money, plus it also gives them an incentive, a financial incentive at the end of it. And next year onwards, what we're going to do is to institute some kind of, the schools used to have sashes when first prize and second prize for that. So we have those lanyards we have the identity dog tags. So we're going to put pins on the lanyards for people who have been certified. So it's visible to the world that this person is certified, that person is not certified. Creates pressure inside.
Now, Karthik, I'm a marketer as well, and when I see a brilliant idea, my job is to adapt and copy it and reuse it. And that's a brilliant idea to make it public inside your company in terms of certifications, gamifying it. To me, that's quite a lot that's coming in. How can it help your business is what my internal people need to be asking. De-jargonize. How can you make money? And as that is clear to the clients, then that comes through. Building curiosity, understanding the billing clearing cycle, ask, physically meet people. Even today's world, once a relationship is built up, then the money and the payment cycle will follow. Quite a lot of nuggets coming in. But I'm going to change tack to ask what drives Karthik Kumar outside the corporate world.
I would say one word: curiosity. I'm curious about knowing things.
Right.
Why does it not happen?
That's been a running theme in our discussion today. Brilliant. Curiosity.
So I'm curious about things. So I read a lot. I tend to not necessarily things related to my work. It could be as weird as fires in Australia to fires in the moon. Right? Rural development and so on and so forth. So it's not any one topic that I'm focused upon. It could be a range of subjects, not necessarily I'm going to use them, but basically you know how things work, right? And you get to learn about it. And so that is one factor. The second thing is I try and do a fair bit of writing, right? Both in terms of sharing the knowledge that I have, as well as giving a point of view which is different from the normal point of view, right? Because if you take, if you take many columnists, right, they keep rehashing the same thing again and again and again. They don't have a different point of view on how things could be changed. I mean, for instance, in India, we keep talking about poverty all the time, right? And we say we have to reduce poverty. Nobody talks about wealth creation. So if you create wealth among the poor, right, your poverty is almost automatically reduced. So it's a question of focus, right? When you're talking about poverty reduction, you're talking of giving subsidies, giving stuff like that. But at the same time, you start talking about wealth creation, you're talking about creating employment opportunities. You're talking about how to make people more productive, or how to help people use their productive capacity. So that changes the perspective from how you do things, right? So that is the whole purpose of curiosity, and that's the whole purpose of writing, to be able to look at a problem from a different perspective and say, hey, if you look at it from this way, maybe what you've been doing for so long will start working. I mean, another one pet theme of mine is we keep talking of brain drain from India. Right? So thinking of brain drain, start thinking of the brain bank. Right? I mean, I was seeing this map of the US, which showed by ethnicity where people are located. If you take the US, almost virtually the entire eastern seaboard and the Midwest is populated by Indians. Right? So if you use them as a brain bank and said, look, here is this huge brain bank that we have. How can we leverage that? You'll be sending more people from out of India than trying to keep them here. So that's the perspective.
Curiosity, Karthik. So what's new that you're going to try in 2020?
I've been hoping to learn cooking for the last 2-3 years. maybe this new year I will try and start actually doing something. Because again, there is a curiosity in all that also, because cooking, if you notice, I mean, the sambar powder that was used to be made in your mother's house was different from the in your maternal grandmother's house is different from the one made in your paternal grandmother's house, right? So there's a lot of variation possibility, and therefore a lot of curiosity is involved in that also, because you can always say what next. If I mix this differently, what will happen? I don't know whether my wife will throw the food right back in the face or not, but it's worth trying.
Karthik, if I were to request you for a book recommendation, what would it be?
From the most the book I like most, there's a Murakami book that I'm thinking of. The title doesn't come to my mind straight away. It's a work of fiction. So it's a story about a guy who is a loner, right? But actually, he helps bond an entire team of friends together by being a loner, right? So it was written by Murakami about 5 years ago. I read 5 years ago. It was very different from most of the books. I'm not able to get the titles offhand. So Murakami, by and large, is a very good fiction writer. Then the other non-fiction writer I like very much is Richard Feynman. If you read Richard Feynman's books, they are very, very inspirational, mainly because they challenge the norm all the time. Right? So Richard Feynman is another favorite author of mine. And there is, in terms of humor, I don't know, there's an Italian author called Giovanni Guarasci, who used to write books about a fictional mayor of a town, a village in Italy called, and his name was Don Camillo, right? And Pepone. Pepone was the name of the mayor, and it was fights between Pepone and Don Camillo. Pepone was a mayor and Don Camillo was a village priest. And Pepone was a leftist and Don Camillo was a rightist. So, and both were friends too. So that's a very interesting.
Lovely. As diverse as you said, your reading experiences are. So Karthik, thank you very much for joining into this discussion. There's a ton loads of learnings that we have, and we look forward to continue our interaction.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
All the best. Okay.
Thank you. End of interview. Karthik, we'd like to formally request your permission to use this content across audio, video, and various media on the social platforms.
Sure, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.